Ooh! So at this moment, I think I'm going to do just a basic explanation of the world and like the universe that my language takes part in. You know, most people, as far as I've seen, when they're making their conlangs, they're all like, "Oh, I'm gonna start with the phonemes, and then I'm gonna create the little consonant vowel clusters, possibilities, and things like that." But no, this happened completely backwards, which is why it's such a big undertaking for me to make, because this is a language that has been in development on and off for like 3 years. No, like 5 years, since before I knew about linguistics. And I explained that a little bit in a previous video, but for the most part, it all started really coming together after I learned about linguistics, in the past like year or so. That's when the majority of this content has started to take shape, and is becoming less cringy as time goes on. But it all came into existence because I wanted to create a language for this fictional world that we had back from 2007 through 2014, called ojunkatauu. And so we have like a website for it over here. You see, I made a website because in about 2010, there was so much history and content that I created for it that I couldn't remember it all in my head, so I created a website for it. And after that, everything got written down on here until a little bit after the yard model got destroyed. And so if there's any pictures, they're probably going to be either like cheap little paint flags that were drawn on there a long time ago, or they're like, pictures from my backyard whenever we had the yard model and would like fill it up with water and stuff. So ojunkatauu is this tiny little peninsular country. It's mostly kind of like a desert-ish area with a lot of fertile valleys and some mountain ranges. It technically takes place in a future version of Earth, because it's a long story as to why, including like humans kind of they blew each other up or whatever, but then then there were like dogs, right? And the dogs kind of gradually evolved, and the dogs that survived the nuclear war or whatever kind of had like some form of intelligence DNA put into them by future Earth scientists that made them gradually evolve to become more like humans and stuff. But I ain't no furry, so we're just going to kind of disregard that and pretend that they're people. Their mouths function the same as people. Their appearance, yes, in drawings and depictions, they are technically like dog people, but again, not in a furry way. They're just don't worry about that. I had no idea what that meant back then when I was like 7 years old. And then once I figured out what that meant, about like 2012, I was ashamed, yes, but I still hold my conviction that this is not the people in here. They're dog people, but it was not created that way for any kind of furry content. And I'm sure that if I like publish this at some point, then yeah, the real furries are gonna go galore on that Rule 34. But we're not gonna worry about that until we have to cross that river. So for all intents and purposes, they're just people. They're just like, humanoid with human-like mouths. That's all that matters for the linguistics of it. So moving on, it takes place like millions of years in the future, right? Now, it's kind of an undisclosed amount of millions of years in the future, but it's enough time for the continents to kind of shift a little bit, for some things to flood, some things to unflood, for several waves of like, climate changes to happen, ice ages and heady times and whatever. And then at some point there's like a meteor that comes down and hits and causes like a lot of volcanic activity that creates a very geologically new peninsula south of Baja California off the coast of Mexico, and that is the Furries Peninsula. And so once these people are, beginning to move away from their Uranian, which is Mississippi-ish, and then they kind of spread out in different directions. And those original people were the Proto-Cern-Cahelan language family. And so the Proto-Cern-Cahelan language family spreads out. The ones that go east become the Noshans and the Cerndians. The ones that go west become the Alkins, the Cahelans, and the Fwanals, and the Shomateks. The Fwanal branch came down in two branches, one of which went down into the southern half of the peninsula and became like the early Fwanal civilization, and the second one came down, split off between the Paramachican branch and the Arojanzan branch, and the Arojanzans moved into the northern part of the peninsula. Alright, so I found a couple maps. So here's one that I drew in crayon when I was in like 7th grade, and this is just showing, with obviously digitally edited with like political divisions in 2013, like the equivalent of 2013, even though it's technically 2013 AR, which is like after remodernization, which is their equivalent to like how they tell the years. Here's a map. The last thing that I made on my iPad before it got destroyed. Rest in peace. Got in this area that's Redlands, where a lot of the Paramachicans live. And here's the Fwanal Peninsula here. This northern area over here is where the Arojanzans migrated in, and the southern area over here is where the Fwanals migrated in. And they basically established two main civilizations, and there's a lot more detail to it. I started writing like a history book for it a little while ago. Written in my alphabet. It's about like the ancient history of it, so that there's a lot more detail, but I'll split that into more videos later. But basically, they bicker for a long time. In the year 0 AR, they discover how to use electricity because they find ancient like human ruins. They find old bunkers and stuff. That advances their technology a little bit, but they still have to advance on their own. So as you lead up over the course of thousands of years, they end up getting taken over by the Paramachicans, and they declare independence in 1846 AR, and then they become their own nation, and then they become like a really powerful nation because even though they're like surrounded by desert, they got this geyser lake here that fills up the whole area with water and all that goes down the Death Canyon River, which I'm going to create an endonym for soon. They're like a super prized territory, prosperous little nation, until everything kind of goes wrong, basically by the time the yard model is created in real life for us, and then everything kind of goes downhill in like an apocalyptic proportion by the time 2014 AR happens. It's a desert-ish nation, small peninsula, really powerful country. They vary between having an empire and being invaded, and their government was generally democratic, but things kind of fell apart in 2013 again because, I became the real-time god of it. We've done some D&D in it that takes place in 2011 AR onward. Thousands of years of stories. There's a lot of content that goes into every chunk of the history of this. And so I wanted to make a language for it. Well, one of the main goals was for it to be possible to say the name of the country in my language with every word meaning something. Because originally Elfuankasanocha was kind of just like a random amalgamation of things. Well, Fwank wasn't. Fwank is based on Frankie, my friend Santi's dog. The rest of it was kind of just random, like pretending to be a different language. Because again, I didn't know linguistics yet. But so I eventually successfully created the name for it. The endonym, official governmental name of Elfuankasanocha being Ishlafuankasanocha, and I'm pretty happy with that. After all these years, the name Elfuankasanocha finally means something. It means homeland of the Fwanal people with the weird foreign practices. That is all good for now. Let's get this channel to more than 100 subscribers by the end of the year so I can beat out my old YouTube channel. I mean, this is a school project anyway, so I'm gonna keep making videos. Eventually it'll get there, but it would be really tasty if you could leave a little like, comment, and subscribe, boys. Alright, bye-bye.